Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new hardcore punk record from Fall Out Boy, titled PAX Days. Okay, so earlier this year, the legendarily maligned pop-punk band Fall Out Boy came back from a 5-year break to release their newest album, Save Rock and Roll. An album which I have rather complicated feelings about. Basically, it's an album that works a lot better in pieces than it does as a whole, and the overloaded arrogance and venom towards their neglected fanbase kinda got on my nerves more than once. What I did kind of gloss over in my earlier review, however, was that there was something of a shift on sound on this album towards something that's more of electronic rock bent in the cacophony of the mix. It really honestly didn't bother me all that much. Fall Out Boy have always stuck close to a sound that was popular in the modern pop scene, but it did bother the fans, who were pretty violently split on this album. But apparently, however, bassist and primary songwriter Pete Wentz heard about these complaints and decided to release a surprise album this year. Recruiting producer Ryan Adams and recording the EP over 2 days, Pete Wentz stressed that this was something that the band was doing for fun, allowing them to get some demons out, inspired by Black Flag and hardcore punk from the late 80s and early 90s. And here's where I have to confess some of my own ignorance here. I don't know a lot about hardcore punk. Now look, I don't mind it. I listen to Black Flag and Fugazi, but I honestly don't have as much of a wide frame of reference with the genre. I'm more of a post-punk and a narco-punk sort of guy personally, and I'm not the biggest fan of how some of the hardcore genres have evolved over the past couple of years. That being said, this is Fall Out Boy here, returned to a genre they were last anywhere close to about 10 years ago, and primarily being now a pop-punk band, well, it'll probably be more accessible and then jumping straight into hardcore, so why not? How does Fall Out Boy's PAX Days end up turning out? It's alright. It's not a hardcore punk record that's going to blow your mind, but PAX Days is perfectly suitable for what it is and what it's trying to be. A bunch of guys goofing off for 2 days in a studio, smashing out something dirty, rough, and deliberately unpolished. It's also less than 14 minutes long, so I'm going to endeavor to keep this review shorter than the EP that I'm reviewing. Instrumentation and production are pretty much exactly from what you would expect from a Fall Out Boy punk record. Fast-paced, kinda grimy, but nothing too dirty, and catchier than it really has any right to be. Fall Out Boy has always had a gift for really good hooks, and it comes through here, particularly on tracks like Hot to the Touch, Cold on the Inside. It's an area where their pop sensibility serves them well. And particularly, I like to highlight some of the bass work and the drumming for being pretty damn solid. And there are points where the rhythm guitar gets a pretty solid groove, all things considered. However, there are points where the slapdash production doesn't exactly favor the band, particularly when the feedback blends into the mix and it isn't cut out, which, yeah, sure, it contributes to the messy punk feel of it all, but when the band actually has a pretty solid groove, it's not good when the feedback drowns out that groove. And, kind of unsurprisingly, there are points on this record where there's a bit of bloat, and where I could tell that some of the songs could have been shortened just a little bit, perhaps even cutting this EP down to 12 minutes. And Patrick Stump, his vocals are passable enough. He doesn't do any real screaming, which is common in the hardcore scene. But that being said, he brings a fair amount of energy, and he doesn't exactly embarrass himself, which is good here. So what about the lyrics? Oh, what about them? They're barely here and even less relevant. There are points where the song titles are long enough to comprise a significant portion of the lyrics within these songs, and really, these lyrics just don't amount to much. They're traditional punk topics. Partying, protesting the man, being legit and thus being bored and sexually unsatisfied, distaste for the American establishment, and Fall Out Boy really don't do anything all that special with them. Although, once again, they don't really embarrass themselves either. And really, that's kind of disappointing though. Fall Out Boy has a reputation for being a pretty lyrically dexterous band, with pretty good songwriting chops, and here, you only see fragments of it, and I gotta admit, I was a little disappointed with that. And that leads to the big question of this album. Who the hell is this record for? Most hardcore punks have never listened to Fall Out Boy and would never be interested in a punk record from this band, and most of their current fan base would probably consider this material too unpolished and lacking in, well, everything besides some competent grooves. I guess if you want to hear Fall Out Boy return to their roots, but here's the thing, there are points on this record where it doesn't quite feel do-it-yourself enough to match their earlier tapes. It's too clean, a little too pop at points to be a really legit hardcore record. Besides, there's no screaming on it. And there's a reason that most punks go towards pop and not the other way around, and PAX Days is a good example of why. The most I can say about this record, well, it's fun, and that's why it's going to get a 6 out of 10 from me. And hot to the touch, cold on the inside, well, it's a pretty solid song, and I kind of liked it. But outside of that, I guess with this record, Fall Out Boy proved that they can make a vaguely passable hardcore punk record. And even then, I'd say it's closer to punk rock than hardcore punk. And if you have a driving urge that this record has to be a part of your life, it's worth a listen. Otherwise, well, it exists and it doesn't really offend. Make of that what you will. But yeah, pretty short review, but as I said, these sort of things happen. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more. If you would like to have any comments on how I might be able to improve things, or if there's any other records you might want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to take a listen. Until then, see you next time.